Boy, is it just me, or is it super messed up that currently the highest rate of return on investment right now in college football, and I'm sure all of you experts had this, the three teams right now that have given you the most money or the most wins: Western Kentucky, the Hilltoppers, University of Texas, San Antonio, and Bowling Bleeping Green. And no one fucking realizes it. Welcome back to the Social Spreader. One of the things that I wanted to address, there are two things actually from the first show that I want to address. One of them, when I was talking about same game parlays, what I had meant was there was a time when you could put the underdog to cover, the favorite to win, and then the total. So you essentially got three wagers on one game. From my knowledge, maybe I haven't tried it in a while, because once I tried to do it again and I realized it wasn't a thing, I got really sad and I didn't want to try it again. I don't know if it is a thing anymore, but that's what I was referring to in the first episode. Was that was a time that was magical when you could really choose exactly what was going to happen in the game. So just want to make sure that was clear. I also got a lot of responses in regard to my avatar. Well, not a lot. I don't have too many people who are following me yet. Anyway, people are I was asked, what's with the Dr. Fart lampshade that is on the parking meter. And it's actually a really funny story. I was living in downtown Denver. We actually live pretty close to there now. And it was on the weekend. I believe it was a Sunday morning. And I was getting me and my wife some food. She was my girlfriend at the time. As I'm parking in front of the restaurant, I look in my rearview mirror. Granted, this is December, and I see a white man dressed rather lightly for the time of the season. Now, if you've ever been to Denver, whenever you see a white man acting in a very certain way, the antennas kind of go up. So I'm sitting in my car and I see him, and he is running down the sidewalk, kind of weaving in and out. There wasn't too many people on there, but you could tell that he was either agitated or on something. And again, being from Denver, chances are high. And so I'm like, you know what? I don't know if he's going to do anything to my car. I'm kind of the only car there. So I'm just going to calmly step out of my car, kind of lean up against it almost, 1970s-ish, like, hey, this is my car. And really kind of set forth, you know what, man, you can do whatever you want. I don't care what you're doing today, but you're not going to do it on my car. And as he comes closer, I realize, what is in his hands? And only when he's about 40 yards away to us, oh, it's a lampshade. Maybe he stole it. I don't know. And he's yelling all of these things that are very inaudible, if that's even a word, very hard to hear. And as he approaches my car, I notice he's kind of directing his zigzags towards me. I'm like, come on, man. Like, I don't want this right now. I'm starving. I'm getting some food for me and my girl. I'm going back home. It's a Sunday, football season. Come on. I don't need this shit. And he comes up to me as I'm putting quarters into the parking meter. And he says something that I couldn't understand, but he said it very, very loudly and very boisterously. And he comes up to my meter, slams the lampshade down on the meter, and goes, "Ha! You're Dr. Fart now!" And I didn't really know what to make of it, because before I could ask him any follow-up questions or anything like that, he was gone. And he was actually rather fast for someone who was wearing flip-flops in Denver in December. And I turned it around because I couldn't see it. And when I saw it, I think I laughed for 15 straight minutes. I went back into my car and literally cried because I was laughing so hard. So that's the story. that's where the story of my current avatar comes. Now, do I have a plan to upgrade the avatar? Well, yeah. But as I've said before, the production value is going to go up. My petty cash fund is going to go up. And yes, I am going to make advancements on my avatar. I just really like the story. It is kind of funny if you have a sense of humor. The thing that I will not ever understand is the email that I got saying, "Yeah, man, I like that. Fuck Dr. Fauci." And as I said, it's going to be very hard for me to stick to sports on this show. And I understand that people have underlying health conditions, and you may have some kind of a pre-existing condition, whether it's upper respiratory, whether it's asthma, whether it's some kind of a oxygen flow type of problem. Now, I am the son of a nurse. I'm not going to speak like I'm some kind of a scientific researcher or anything remotely close to a doctor, other than Dr. Fart. But I would hope that this would reach the ears of everyone out there, for all of them, and for the 30 to 40% of this country that can't. We can't agree on anything. But no, that was not a shot in response to the email. That was not a shot at Dr. Fauci. In fact, I have the vaccine. My wife has it. We have an 8-month-old son, and when you do have a son or a child, I'm a first-time father, and when you do have a son, you kind of tend to look at the world with new eyes. And to all the people who are protesting, and to all the people who are saying whatever it is that you're saying, just get the vaccine. 2.5 billion people have it. The curve is finally starting to look promising, and that's because of it. So spare me your QAnon horse shit. Spare me any other religious exemption or any other piece of shit that you've came up with to not get this vaccine. In my opinion, it's the epitome of democracy. It was developed by a Republican, and it was administered by a Democrat, and it saved a lot of lives, just like every single vaccine in history has saved more lives than they've harmed. So let's do some lines. As I said before, the fact that those three teams, Western Kentucky, the Road Runners, oh boy, which I've had in a couple weeks, and so that's fun. And Bowling Green, those are the three teams right now that if you were to have picked them, you'd be undefeated, and that's what's just unbelievable. And in terms of sports wagering, that's what's just so unbelievable to me. And in college hoops, there's someone every year. Go look at 2019 Hofstra. Go look at the Drake Bulldogs from last year. This happens every single year. And trying to find that team, trying to find anyone who just covers, because good teams win, great teams cover. I don't know if Bowling Green is a great team. They only beat the Rodents by 4, which actually leads me into this. If you are looking for a microcosm of the utter insanity and just how hard it is to pick winners and to wager on sports, look no further than the Golden Rodents up in Minneapolis. They were one half of football away from finally beating Ohio State. And the fact that ticket didn't cash is nothing short of tragic. As a 14-point underdog at home with a lead at halftime, you don't cash that check. You don't cash that ticket. That is such a tough ticket. That's a tough one to swallow. And so a lot of us probably thought, hey, they're a good squad. They returned everybody. Pretty much everybody sat out because of COVID. And so Miami of Ohio, the mighty Redhawks, are coming into town next week. And they, by the skin of their teeth, as 20-point favorites, as 3-touchdown favorites, they win by 5. And so now everyone is really very confused. And I don't know how many people are wagering on the Rodents. My wife went to the U of M. I'm from that area. As I said before, currently live in Colorado. And speaking of that, They came here. The next week, they came to Colorado. We were planning on going to the game. Unfortunately, we couldn't because the aforementioned 8-month-old that we have. And they were 3-point dogs. And that's... Colorado played well against A&M the weekend before. And they blow them out. They blow them out. 30-0. It wasn't even close. And then you'd think, the confidence, the swagger is starting to come back. Miami of Ohio doesn't really, motivate someone to have any swagger. But the fact that you beat a good MAC team and then you go to Colorado, you wipe the field with them. And then Bowling Green comes to town. And you are 31-point favorites. And you lose outright. If anybody out there had the cojones, testicular fortitude, as I like to call it, to pick a Bowling Green money line on that, hey, bravo. Anyway, moving on. One of the games, so what we're going to do here today is I'm really going to show you exactly how I look at all of these games. Now, I have a system, and it includes this, all right? These are my sheets. Yes, I'm old school, all right? I'm old school from numerous ways. Was an outside salesman for the greater part of 15 years, worked for 3 Fortune 500 companies. And so I do like to write things out. It kind of gets me in the zone. It kind of clears my mind of everything else. Plus, it's also kind of a good way to really master, if you will, what the schedule is that weekend. It's not always, this weekend's loaded, just with ranked teams that are up against each other. But when it comes to actually knowing when teams are playing, where they're playing, I don't know. It's always been something that I've liked. I hope you find something that you like, something that works for you, something to get you in the zone, something to really kind of drown out everything else and hopefully make it easier for you to come to some kind of a conclusion or a rational, an educated, rational shot in the dark to see if you can pick a winner, because this is really hard. The first game that I'm looking at, though, is BYU Utah State. Utah State, BYU is undefeated. Utah State's 3-1. A lot of people thought this was going to be a very down team. They played well. I don't really know, outside of going to the Smurf turf, which nobody likes. Nobody, come on, no one likes going to Boise. Nobody wants to go to Boise. That's where teams go to lose. And so, a team who beat Air Force as an underdog, covered against North Dakota, and don't ever sleep on North Dakota, South Dakota, North Dakota State. Those are quality programs that play really good football. In fact, if you look at week 1, I do believe that every team in South and North Dakota covered, and I believe they won outright. I know I had them to cover, so I didn't really care. But Utah State, they have played pretty well. As I said before, going to the Smurf turf, no one really enjoys that. And the last time that I checked, just a second, please. Okay, so Utah State is 14-5 straight up in their last 19 at home. That's a pretty good record. I also see that they are 4-2 against the spread in their last 6. 4-2 straight up as well. This is interesting. BYU is 6-12 against the spread in their last 18 games against Utah State. However, they're 15-4 straight up in their last 19. So BYU wins a lot of these games, but they don't often cover. That might be something. On the road, BYU has hit the over 4 of the last 5. And 5 out of the last 6 against BYU, Utah State's hit the over. Okay. So those are some pretty juicy pieces of information that I'm probably going to look at as I continue to look through the schedule. The total has gone over in 5 of the last 5 games that Utah State has played on a Friday. Okay. So I'm going to go up and look at the over-under right now. It's at 62. 80% of the money's on the over. About 88% of the money is on BYU to cover 9. As I said in my first episode, there's a reason why there are those huge hotels and huge casinos. If you find something against the public that you like, and you've noticed that public money is rather heavy, rather lopsided, it's usually a pretty good bet. And those pieces of information, the last 3 that these two teams have played, Utah State's actually won 2 out of 3, and it's at the over every time. The average score is 33-28 Utah State. Now, Jordan Love was playing for Utah State those last couple of years, so that might be a little bit skewed. However, Utah State is still 3-1 against the spread. They average 31 a game. The defense has been kind of suspect, so I would say BYU definitely has an edge on that half of the ball. But when it comes to covering, from what I've seen, night games at home, the back door is always open a lot of the time. The other thing too that I wanted to review. So last week I talked about Wake Forest, and they ended up demolishing. At least I think they did. I know they covered. They end up, So they crushed Virginia, but they had their number. That was one of the things that I had said on my podcast, was that sometimes certain teams just have other teams' numbers. The other team that I talked about was Appalachian State. Now, if we're going to talk about the rodents of Minneapolis being the microcosm of how sports gambling is, we have to touch on how fickle the gambling gods are. And if you look at what happened at the end of that Appalachian State Marshall game, if you missed it, Appalachian State is up 31-30. There's less than 2 minutes left. Their halfback has a clear lane to the end zone. It's very clear that Marshall was going to allow them to score in hopes of getting the ball back and having enough time. It was 31-30. He fell down at the 2, and that would have put him up 8. The line was 7. It's really tough. Those are the ones that are tough. Because but that's where the sport is headed. That's where we are right now. If you are a team and you're looking at the end of the game, would you rather have your defense on the field to try to stop somebody with all the rule changes and everything that kind of goes to the advantage of the offense? Or would you rather have your offense on the field, and that gives you a chance to either, well, in this instance, let's assume Appalachian State scored and they kicked the extra point, so it's 38-30. Would you rather have your offense on there for a touchdown and a 2-point conversion? It seems to be that's where the sport is headed. Did it still piss me off? Oh my God, that's a tough one. That's a tough one. I almost wish that he would have slipped and fallen into the end zone. Either way, I would assume that that is a very rare occurrence. I would hope that it is. But Appalachian State, and that's, this is one of the things that I also look at as well. Is it a good rebound time? If a team loses, if you don't cash a ticket, if you don't cover the spread in that way, always look into the next week. And lo and behold, they're playing Georgia State. Now, I know a couple of years ago, Georgia State was pretty good. I know last weekend they kept up with Auburn. Weekend before, they lost to Charlotte. Weekend before that, they lost to North Carolina. North Carolina dropped 60 on them, and Army scored 40 on them the weekend before. So they're kind of in a tough stretch. And nope, I misspoke. They actually won against Charlotte. Charlotte's also 3-1 against the spread. Sports gambling is so fun. Charlotte. They actually won against them, and that's actually their only loss. So, Georgia State, last 3 against Appalachian State, they're 0-3. They've only been able. Their average score is 19 points. Let me see here. Trying to find some good pieces of information that can be useful for this game. Okay, Appalachian State is 7-0 straight up in their last 7 games against Georgia State. But they're 1-5 against the spread in their last 6 on the road. The spread right now is Appalachian State by 10, and they've got 80% of the money. Each team is 2-2 against the spread. Appalachian State's 3-1 overall. Georgia State's 1-3. Man, that's a tough one. That might be a pass. Which leads me into this. Look, I completely understand if you want action. Having action on all these games is fun. It gets you in. It makes you interested in a game that you might not normally be, and that's great. That's what I think the true beauty of sports gambling is it gives you an opportunity to not only research teams, but also to find teams that you normally wouldn't even think about. And like I said before, anyone else sitting at 4-0 as well with UTSA, the Roadrunners? I doubt it. You can tell me how many parlays and whatnot that you've hit. I'm sure you've rushed to the ticket counter to put your money down on UTSA, Western Kentucky. Anyway, so this game to me, because Appalachian State on the road's 1-5 against the spread, their last 6. They're also 1-6 against the spread in their last 7 games against an opponent in the Sun Belt. I would look at the money line. I'm guessing as a 10-point favorite, it's probably somewhere around. Oh man. As of now, a lot of it's right at about minus 400, and the juice just isn't worth the squeeze. This might be a hard pass for me, sometimes that's a win. Sometimes not putting down anything is a win. I do see that Georgia State not only, they can't stop a nosebleed right now. They're letting up 37 a game, man. So the over under right now, 56. Last 3, the average score is 40-20. Okay. Appalachian State. So what? Appalachian State's going to have to score 40 to hit that one over. Man, that's a tough one. I think for me, this one's going to be a hard pass. Appalachian State did leave kind of a sour taste in my mouth. That's for sure. But not having action on a game is sometimes a win, especially when it's Appalachian State versus Georgia State, 2 teams that I'm assuming people are rushing to the ticket counter to have action on. The next game that I'm looking at is actually Louisville-Wake Forest. So, we had Wake Forest last week. I said it was a really good lead. Another thing that's kind of interesting, they have hit the under every single game, and the over-under 62 in this game. They're playing Louisville. Last 3, Louisville's 2-1. They've hit the over every time. The average score is 47-45. Damn. These teams put up 90. Now Wake Forest, they're playing pretty damn well. So they beat. Okay, this is interesting. Common foes is something that I like to look at. It just, to me, in my mind, when I'm going through all this, it gives me an idea of, I guess, apples to apples. I'm sure there's going to be plenty of you out there that are going to poke holes in that. But then, show me how many you've won. And so Louisville beat Florida State 31-23 last week in Tallahassee. Wake Forest beat them 35-14. Wake Forest is 6-1 against the spread. Their last 7 against teams in the ACC. The total, as I had said before, the total's gone over in 4 of the last 5 of Wake versus Louisville, but Wake Forest is on an under tear. They're 4 straight in the under. Louisville 2-5 against the spread in their last 7 games against Wake Forest. Yet they're 4-1 straight up in their last 5. The total's also gone over in 13 of their last 20. Louisville's not necessarily the road warrior that you would hope for. They're 1-6 straight up in their last 7 against. 1-6 straight up in their last 7 on the road. It doesn't matter who they are up against. Wake Forest is pretty healthy. I think it's another good lean towards Wake. They're 6.5 points right now. 75% of the money's on Wake Forest. Obviously the trend is that Wake goes in the under, but not against Louisville. They don't. They got blown out last year. Louisville blew Wake Forest out last year before 62-59. Year before 56-35 Wake. Boy, I hate to pull up all of these games that are going to be a hard pass, but man, I was hoping for a little bit more definitive confidence when I'm looking at all these stats, and I'm really not feeling it. Louisville. So Louisville played Virginia last year at the end of the year, November 14th, and they lost by 14. Wake just beat them by 20. They beat Florida State by 21. Florida State they kept up with Louisville, but they lost by 8. So from that perspective, Wake certainly has an edge. I also see Louisville doesn't do very well. 2-5, as I said, 2-5 against the spread the last 7 against Wake. I think Wake is a pretty good lean actually here. So one of the other games that kind of caught my eye was Duke, North Carolina. Now, I know that these teams are definitely more of a college hoops type of a matchup when you're talking about these two schools. But Duke's a quiet 3-1 against the spread. I don't know what happened to North Carolina. Georgia Tech dropped almost 50 on them last week. I do believe that it was a pretty low-scoring game, pretty much midway through the second quarter. However, the spread is North Carolina by 20, and I don't really know how much of, in terms of talent, in terms of the caliber of athlete that each of these schools ends up with. I don't know where this 20 points is coming from. Now, normally, when I look at a spread like this and I'm like, something smells like shit. Something is fishy here. That usually leads me to conclude that someone probably knows more than I do, which won't be the first time nor the last time that someone knows more than me. But the money line right now for Duke is plus 800, and the last 3, North Carolina is 2-1. They're 56-24 last year, but never forget North Carolina had 2 NFL running backs last year. I believe, unless I'm severely mistaken, that each of those guys hit 1,000 yards as well. So maybe a more accurate portrayal would be the other years. And in 2019, it was 20-17, a very rivalry type of a football game. 2018, 42-35 Duke. 2017, 27-20 Duke. So look, this is a good lesson in rivalry games. We had one earlier this year, Iowa State. I don't think Iowa State's really that good. I don't think the conference is either. And so if I get a rivalry game and I get a 20-point underdog, I'm probably going to go with the dog. And that doesn't mean that there's going to be some magical win here. It just means, do I think that in a rivalry game, something that usually means more than the average game, that they're going to try a little harder and probably keep it close? Sure. There's really no outstanding evidence or information that I have here to say otherwise. And so, yeah, I'd probably lean with the Dukies. Hopefully they don't take a Duke. Anyway, the other team that I want you guys to be aware of, and I hope from last year you are, Coastal Carolina, 2-1-1 against the spread. They are this week playing the Louisiana Monroe Warhawks. Now, the Warhawks are 2-1. They're also 2-1 against the spread. However, I do believe, their quarterback got hurt last game. They did really upset Troy last week as a 24-point dog. They did not cover against Kentucky as 31-point underdogs. And the last time that they played... So they didn't play last year. The last three, Louisiana Monroe's actually won. They've beaten Coastal Carolina every time. So maybe Coastal Carolina's got a little bit of revenge on their mind because they did not play last year. Last time they played was Thanksgiving week 2019 at ULM, and it was 45-42 ULM. The total has gone under. Here's something for you. Louisiana Monroe's 0-9 straight up their last 9 on the road. They're 2-6 in their last 8 in week 5. Coastal Carolina 10-0 straight up their last 10 at home. Everybody kind of knows that. They're also 5-0 against the spread their last 5 games in October. And every point is leaning towards Coastal on this one. And Coastal has been a very fun team to wager with over the last year. They covered a lot of spreads, and they have been very, very good to bettors who choose their side. So, those are the games that I wanted to go over here today. We're also going to do a lot more commentary. We're also going to get a lot more discussions kind of underway as this podcast continues to evolve and continues to grow. Yes, before I forget, I'm not sponsored by Homage or Homage. How does anyone say? I say I would pay Homage. They are a fantastic company, and they make these retro NBA Jam shirts. And this guy right here, Luca, the Beluga Whale. I cannot wait for NBA and college hoops. It's so much fun. There's so many games. It's so much fun. But in my opinion, he is going to rewrite the record books and take over the true GOAT, LeBron James. We'll go over that in the next episode. Good luck with your bets.